Um, Welcome everybody to this first event to launch Eastern Communities Homes. Many of you will still be joining, but we have a great panel and you will be here to hear all of it rather than just my introduction. As most of you already know, Eastern Community Homes is the community-led housing hub for the East of England. It is the one-stop shop where local authorities, communities, housing associations and other partners can find the advice and support they need to build more homes with the input from local people. I'm Linda Hazy and I'm the chair of the East of England Local Government Association. And I'm pleased to say that ILGA is a supporter and partner of Eastern Community Homes. Before we begin, just a little bit of housekeeping, as we always get on all our webinars. Please introduce yourselves in the chat and say where you're from and your interest in community-led housing. So despite not being able to see each other, we will at least be able to network. Questions should be submitted through the Q&A, and there is a Q&A session right at the end of the webinar. This webinar is being recorded and made available after the launch event session has taken place. So, councils from across the region have been showing their support for community-led housing, and already 12 local authorities have signed up to the hub, and we are in discussions with many more. Today we will hear from elected members from across the east of England of their experience of community-led housing and the successes and the challenges. But before that, let's hear from Nick Shuttleworth. Good morning, Nick, and who is the chair of Eastern Community Homes, and he will set the scene for today. So Nick, please outline what you have been doing and how we can all become involved, and an overview of the Rural Community Council working with the community housing partners and neighbourhood planning, which is leading to an important increase in the number of homes that we are seeing across the region. So Nick, over to you, please.
Thank you so much, Linda. Thank you for chairing this morning's webinar and for your support more generally. I just want to add my own word of welcome to everyone, and it's really great to know so many have joined us this morning. This is the first, as some of you will know, this is the first of 3 days of events to formally launch our Eastern Community Homes. And I should emphasise it's the product of a lot of hard work over the past year and more to get this idea off the ground. And much of it, of course, has been done in the challenging circumstances we've all had to face since last March. At the outset, I'd like to acknowledge the support we've received from external sources, most notably the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, who provided important CCORM funding, and from ILGA, as has been apparent in Linda's opening remarks, and as I think will be apparent throughout this morning's session. Community-led housing, where the local community is integrally involved throughout the process, derives benefits from it, and has a long-term role in the ownership and management of the scheme, is not, as most of you will know, a new concept, but it is certainly a growing one, and one that comes in many forms. We already have some exciting schemes around the region in both rural and urban areas, about which you're going to hear more this evening. Where Eastern Community Homes wants to make a difference and believes it can add impetus to this process is by creating a not-for-profit independent hub which offers one-stop shop support for all aspects of community housing, accessible to councils, communities and groups alike. The idea, as Linda indicated in her introduction, has been developed by the 6 rural community councils of the East of England: Bedfordshire Rural Communities Charity, Cambridgeshire Acre, Rural Community Council of Essex, Community Development Action Hertfordshire, Community Action Norfolk and Community Action Suffolk, with Cambridgeshire Acre as the managing partner. And I'd like to acknowledge at this stage the tremendous amount of work Kirsten Bennett and her team have done to get Eastern Community Homes moving and off the ground. I hope many of you listening will know your local rural community council, even if you don't by any means know all of us. If you don't, just let me clarify, we're all registered charities and not-for-profit companies. We're all members of ACRE, which is the National Rural Communities Charity, and all bring to this task considerable corporate experience. In certain cases, some of our organisations are almost 100 years old. We all work to a county-wide remit to empower, support and sustain communities, which manifests itself these days in an increasingly diverse range of projects and services, working in fields such as health and social care, transport, village and community halls, community and neighbourhood planning, and affordable housing. Most of us have well-established rural housing enabler services. Now, Eastern Community Homes is different from that, but we want and we believe we can bring the skills and experience we've developed here to support community-led housing in rural and urban areas. Looking more generally at what we do, I think there are certain characteristics of our work which we feel relate well and will help us in the development of this initiative. Firstly, we're independent. We can play the role, we do play the role of an honest broker because we have no vested interests. We're not part of any tier of government. Then there's our community reach. Last year, across the 6 counties, collectively, we provided direct support to more than 3,000 individual community organisations and had contact with more than 11,000. The bedrock of the rural housing work I've described has been the housing needs, the confidential housing needs surveys we conduct at local community level, some of which more latterly have been integrated into community-wide neighbourhood plans. So community development, finding bottom-up solutions is the absolute core of our existence. And we link that local reach with an active strategic role as well. All of us have much experience of establishing partnerships with local authorities, and most of the rural housing services I've already mentioned are underpinned by and supported by a county-wide housing partnership, which brings us already into a close working relationship with local authorities and housing providers. In recent months, we've been communicating with local authorities across the region and talking directly to some of you about what Eastern Community Homes can offer to you. We believe we can raise awareness and provide you with specific training on community-led housing. We can bring you together with community-led housing groups, housing associations, and with a growing network of technical advisors to share expertise and experience. We can provide examples of housing and planning policy, good practice examples that can help facilitate and provide a supportive framework for the development of community-led housing. And through our network of accredited community-led housing advisors, one based in each of the 6 counties, we can directly support local groups to plan and take forward schemes. That is what we offer. In return, we are asking that all local authorities consider, as some have done already, to make us a small grant of £1,500 or £3,000 over 2 years to sign up, to join us, to support us, and to bridge that gap between the initial CCORM money and the point at which we will be sustainable by generating our own income. I have to say the response has been extraordinarily positive so far. Linda mentioned 12, I counted 13 authorities already on board, and the first bespoke agreement to provide services has just been concluded with Chelmsford City Council. So things are moving, things are progressing, and we're really, really pleased at the support we've received so far. I hope that summarises and gives you a flavour of what we can offer. Fundamentally, we want to help communities throughout the east of England provide the affordable homes that local people need. And we firmly believe that this can best be done by a close working partnership with our local authorities. That is what this morning is all about. That is what we want to build on from our discussions this morning. So thank you all very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. That was extremely interesting. And I think it's the way we all need to go if we're going to deliver the quality and the range of houses that we need in our areas, working with organisations such as yours, that it's the way we can achieve it. I'd now like to introduce Peter Aldous, MP for Waveney in Suffolk. Ooh, sorry, gosh, that's a Freudian slip, isn't it? Anyway, welcome, Peter, and over to you. Thank you.
Linda, very many thanks. Yes, battles over the border between Norfolk and Suffolk with the River Waveney have been played out for many, many years. Many thanks, Linda, for asking me to speak this morning. And I'm just going to sort of give an overview of the planning and the housing system as I see it, and the important role that Eastern Community Homes can play. And it's a great pleasure to be here at this launch this morning. I think this year, more than any other, I think we've come to realize the importance of our homes. Homes are the cornerstone of our lives. They're also the cornerstone of our communities. A warm and secure home underpins good health. It provides young people with the surroundings in which they can learn, pass exams, and from where to set out to achieve their ambitions. It gives peace of mind and the assurance that we need as we grow old with dignity and comfort. A lot of us do have a great home that we've got to know a great deal better over the last year, and which we love and cherish. But I know from my inbox that there are a lot of people who do not have this opportunity. And as a society, we are much poorer for it. It is in this context that the launch of Eastern Community Homes is to be warmly welcomed. House builders, housing associations and councils all do play a role, but there is a missing actor on the stage. That is local communities who want to shape and have a say in how their surrounds, their place evolves and develops over time. They want more control as to how housing is delivered in their communities. Having been a chartered surveyor for 27 years before I was elected as an MP back in 2010, I know at first hand that the planning and development process is complicated, very long-winded, and very expensive. There are a host of challenges with which communities have to contend if they want to get involved. Land and property has become incredibly expensive. The planning system, which in so many ways acts as a guardian and a custodian, is itself long-winded and complicated. Securing funding to not only buy a plot of land or a property, but then to either build on it or to redevelop it is itself very expensive. A knock on the door to your local bank manager, that is assuming that there's still a branch in your town, will result in a polite but firm no. This is all before you agree a deal and instruct your solicitor. Then you may find that the ultimate objective of a project, to deliver homes to local people on low incomes in perpetuity, is easier said than done. It's can be much more complicated. Local homes are extremely expensive, with their price invariably being completely out of kilter with local wages. People born and brought up in local communities can find it incredibly difficult to buy or rent an affordable home where they were born and brought up close to their families and friends. There may be a particular community building, an old hospital or an old former church hall, not listed, but an important community asset that should be reused for a cohesive community benefit. The system can make it incredibly difficult for it to be secured for such a use, which is so important to underpinning local cohesion and a sense of place. It would be wrong to paint house builders as the villains of the piece, but they do work within a framework which means they have to show a profit to meet the requirements of their funders and their shareholders. And thus, so often, they are not able to meet the needs and desires of the local community as to the form that a particular development should take. Housing associations can be the white knights, but they themselves operate within a straitjacket as to what forms of tenure they can offer. This can often mean that affordable rented homes are not protected for future generations. Now, it would probably be misleading of me to say that Eastern Community Homes are a panacea for all these ills, but they can play an important role in our region in funding in finding solutions to these problems. As we've heard, they bring together experts in a one-stop shop, whether that is surveyors, town planners, architects, lawyers, or funders. They provide a model which provides homes at lower than market values for the long term, including initiatives where rents are linked to incomes. Whilst just outside the Waveney constituency that I represent, Southgen in Southwold is a good example of where a community group have achieved a great deal. The former Southwold District Hospital has been redeveloped to provide 9 affordable dwellings, accommodation for free community businesses, and a new home for Suffolk Library. This project provides the community cohesion, which is so important to so many communities across our region. In conclusion, I welcome this launch of Eastern Communities Homes, as Eastern Communities Homes have an important role to play in what is being termed building back better. They are providing communities with the opportunity to determine their own future. For too long, many have felt that they have been a victim of the system. Thanks very much indeed, Linda.
Thank you very much, Peter. As always, very erudite, very pertinent, and absolutely on the button. So I'd now like to introduce Dan Land, who is the chair of Tendring District Council and chair of Thorpe Lesoken Community Land Trust. Dan, over to you. I believe you'll also be joined by Joe.
Well, I've just had a text actually, so we'll watch this space on that one, but I'm sure I'll be okay.
Okay, over to you then, sir.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to talk to you all, and I hope I can give some sort of first-hand practical knowledge and advice to some of you that are watching. From me, you really just get a speech that's from the heart. I'm a local lad who has benefited from some form of housing in my local area that's enabled me to stay in the village where I was born, and then subsequently grow and develop my democratic likes, so to speak. As has been mentioned, I'm a local parish councillor. I'm on the district council, and I think, as many of you may agree with, I wish I knew more about this type of scheme, 3 to 5 years ago, when all of those speculative developments came in. I noticed down on the questions that people are saying, well, we've got some land that's coming forward, and I want to be able to sort of develop it and do something that's slightly different. And I just wish I'd have known more about this 3 to 5 years ago, when the opportunities were sort of presenting themselves. Thorpe Lesoken Community Land Trust came about because I had heard of a similar initiative locally. I felt that it was really important to be able to provide some housing to young people, and the area itself where I live has the possibilities and some opportunities to do that. I thought about it for some time, and I through the district council and contacts that I'd made, Debbie Wildridge being one, and more latterly Laura Atkinson, we decided that it would make sense to potentially set up a community housing trust, community land trust, and that's exactly the direction that we set out to do. The advice at the time was to try and get the community on board, which is obviously the most important thing. Having quite a strong local presence myself, that was something that I knew wouldn't be too arduous, but then it was a matter of getting the right skills onto the team so that we could move forward in a really constructive and proactive way. Joe, my colleague, who unfortunately has just messaged me saying that he's got something that's come up, but Joe's an accountant. He likes cars and I like the beach, and that's why he likes cars and I like the beach, because he's an accountant. Joe's been absolutely instrumental in sort of moving us forward in relation to setting up the benefits of Community Benefit Society. We were able to get a grant of £5,000, which set us on the road really in order to set up the trust. And at that time, we decided that we needed to look at how we were going to engage the community as best possible. COVID, obviously, I hate the COVID excuse, I really do, but with the ability to use digital technology, we were able to glean and gain that there was quite an interest from people so that we could try and move forward with this. We had some ideas of potential schemes. Those schemes in particular were a piece of land that already had planning permission. We made contact with the developer and also had a meeting with the district councillor and the developer. The site in question had permission for 45 units, of which we ascertained through a trust that we might be able to pick up a couple of units. In our mind, I think we were looking at some form of rental situation whereby young people could rent. The scheme I mentioned earlier really struck me in as much as they were renting out their units affordably, and I mean affordably, but they were also adding an additional £100 each month, and this enabled the people that were renting the properties to stay there for 5 years, and at the end of that 5 years they were then presented back with a deposit for their house based on that additional £100 they were paying each month. And this idea rang really true to me, and I thought it was a fantastic way of helping people onto the ladder. So we've moved forward with some discussions, as is the case with everything. We've reached a few, we've stalled on a few items, which has been slightly unfortunate. The piece of land in question is now sort of, the developer's gone slightly quiet. We have another large project that we thought we would look at as well, which is Thorpe Maltings, an old malting site in the village. As you come into the village on the train station, has been an eyesore and something that we've really wanted to bring back to life because it's such a focal point of the village. So at this time, we're in talks with the people that own that property to see whether or not we can do something with it from that point of view. I think the key things that we've come across and that have been really important from my point of view is that reaching the community can take time. You've got to bring the community with you. We've done a number of different consultation exercises, surveys, online correspondence, letters, and write-ups in the village magazine, social media posts. And I think, whenever you do this, it's the old adage, isn't it? We all want development, but we just don't want it in our backyard. But these types of schemes, I think you can really show the benefits more widely if you bring it forward from a community perspective. Really impressed with the opportunities around the CLT, because we can look at doing other things. So if anything to do with business comes up, any units that we might be able to take over, we might be able to look at creating a community hub. I know this has been very successful in Jaywick in tendering as well, and it's been really pushed forward, and that's brought a huge amount of benefits to the local community. The local authority, obviously, in some circumstances, do have assets that they might be able to bring to the table with your trust. I think the key message there is that you really need to have a really strong level of credibility. You need to look like you've done your homework. You need to make sure that you're credible, and we made a really strong effort to come up with a really good brand, investing some time and money in that. So that's really important, and I'm really pleased that we've been able to do that. You really do need the support of your political colleagues and officers within the council. I'm fortunate enough to have some contacts within those environments. However, I'm aware that not everyone might be in the same position. So it's really important to build those relationships with the key members of those teams within the housing departments, planning, to try and establish a really strong relationship, and so that they can see that you really want to bring some real benefits to the local community. Funding obviously is something that's key to all of this, and I think that plays into what I've just said about having a strong brand, showing that you're credible, showing that you understand your market. We are most likely next now to come to present ourselves with a housing needs analysis. We're looking for some funding to get that off the ground. Whilst we've done some sort of low-level stuff, we're now looking to really clarify and cement exactly what the situation is within the village. Although we know, because we've already had some positive feedback from people that are already willing and wanting to engage in the scheme. It's just at this time, it's really sad we're not able to present something a little bit more quickly, so to speak. Other things, redundant buildings and land, it's important to look at the overview, the geography of your area to see exactly what might be available. Look outside the box. There could be opportunities that are not maybe traditional, what you might not have thought of, but there's some wonderful opportunities out there that can present themselves, and that is something we're also looking at really strongly at the moment. So I mean, for me, you know, in 2003, I was able to get on the housing ladder through a rural housing scheme, and having entered into the political landscape, I just think I've achieved a lot, but I want to be able to ensure that there are local people that I know of, that I've grown up with, that also have the opportunity to have a house, have a roof, and to feel like they can still be part of their local community where they've been brought up. So I felt that the trust was just the one clear, surefire way that we could do this, and I really do hope that all of those aspirations come out to play. So yeah, important to have a really strong team, important to have the backing of your district, local authority. In this instance with us, the parish council are not directly involved, although I am a parish councillor, but we keep them up to date and we keep them updated and we keep them well versed on what we're looking to achieve. Keep your eyes open to the potential opportunities that might not always be traditional, and funding, you know, get yourselves seen in the right places, mixing with the right circles, and all of these wonderful people here today and the organisations that are here to support you in this journey have got some fabulous opportunities. So that's kind of where I am, and I just, you know, I really hope in a few months to years time that we can be I can be reporting back to you that some local people have benefited from community-led housing in Thorpe and potentially the wider area. I think that's probably about it.
Great, thank you very much, Dan. You obviously, I think you've just demonstrated that you need passion, commitment, perseverance, and just sometimes, if you don't mind me saying, just bloody mindedness to get the whole thing done. An excellent example to us all, I think. So I look forward to perhaps having conversations with you offline over this. So thank you very much indeed. Jeanette Thomas, if I can now introduce you, Executive Member for Housing, Health and Older People in Stevenage. So good to see you, Jeanette.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. I'll just share my screen. Oh, no. I'm really pleased to have been invited today by Eastern Community Homes to join the panel members and address this audience by sharing some of our experiences at Stevenage as we embark on our first steps to delivering community-led housing. As Linda said, I'm Councillor Jeanette Thomas, the portfolio holder for Housing, Health and Older People, and developing new housing is a big ambition for me. This is because a safe, stable home provides the cornerstone for residents to be able to engage and participate in community life. Firstly, by accessing invaluable community services related to education, health, for their own comfort and sustainment. And secondly, by giving them the opportunity to contribute their own time and effort into cooperative or voluntary activities. When it comes to building housing, we know that it will cause quite a stir in the local community and will not always be welcomed. In some cases, people will have genuine concerns about the change, whilst others will be resistant for more personal or selfish reasons. In Stevenage, as part of our social responsibility to the town, we want to make sure that the dividend, that is the added value the construction brings, is shared and celebrated. Our consultation process involves consulting the community on the type of housing to be built, as well as the essential services that are needed to create a thriving neighbourhood. With that introduction complete, let me begin by talking to you about our town housing development team and the development programme. Stevenage is in the county of Hertfordshire and was the UK's first designated new town. It has a population of around 87,000 today and is confined to just 10 square miles of mainly urban land. This means our scope to deliver rural housing schemes and subsidised co-housing schemes is limited, as we must build on brownfield land opportunities or purchase land opportunities on the open market. Because of this, we have a massive housing need. We retain an ambition to develop lots more affordable housing. That is why in 2016, we decided to create a housing development team and recruited our Assistant Director of Housing Development as a specialist function. Since then, the team has grown to 5 members of staff and has been developed from within the council, bringing together finance and planning and estate skills. As such, this team is highly motivated and committed to Stevenage. They are never afraid to go the extra mile when it comes to community-focused development and procuring best value for Stevenage. To date, we have not relied on any frameworks for our housing development contractors and have competitively tendered for both capital and consultancy work. Our experience is that competition here gives local suppliers a chance to bid and drives value. Let me now go on to talk about some of our achievements and outputs since 2016. Let me just look at those. The team has delivered 270 new completed social and affordable homes across 16 separate schemes. Already we have raised 2.1 million of profit from building homes for sale to reinvest in our programme and support general fund activities. A further £5 million profit is forecast. We have a further 295 homes in construction at present and 300 more in future pipeline schemes. The majority of our affordable programme is funded by our HRA business plan and makes use of one-for-one receipts. The strict timescales on these receipts use and the fact they must sit in the HRA further limits our ability to deliver cooperative housing for ownership, but we have not given up on this area. The true impact of what we are trying to achieve is only realised when you consider the transformation impact that we are having and the attention we pay to delivering the right scheme for the right site and neighbourhood. This is what I will focus on the next couple of slides. I mentioned that our 270 homes have been delivered across 16 schemes. These 16 schemes are of mixed tenure and design, but all are of high quality. They are indistinguishable from private sector schemes, and if I may be so bold, I would say in some cases better than some private sector schemes. The key decision to focus on smaller schemes was so that we could spread the benefits of development across the whole town and amongst all our communities. This created a boost to the local economy, as well as providing affordable housing. It gave every neighbourhood a chance to get involved in the consultation and design process. For those that objected and were anti-development, it also allowed us to demonstrate that we were exploring housing opportunities in all areas and not just picking on their street. The slide shows the varied designs across all of our housing schemes, with a chance for local communities to have an input to personalise the finished product within set parameters, such as choosing between brick colour choices and roof style options. The true impact of the change in place and community support we harnessed comes to life when you consider a before and after picture of one of our schemes. This shows the condition that a former pub site had fallen into after years of neglect. This was a real blight on the neighbourhood. However, once the housing development team were able to complete the land acquisition of the lease, the site was transformed into a new housing scheme, as shown here. A scheme such as this provided us with momentum and community support to deliver another small scheme that was met with considerable opposition in the first instance. Sadly, because of time constraints, only a single consultation event was held, and a lot of negativity felt by the community spilled into formal objections and was picked up by the press. The scheme, nevertheless, was approved as it was fine in planning terms. However, as a team, we felt that potentially we had caused a conflict within the existing community and new residents would be moving in. This was something we wanted to avoid in future schemes. Before progressing to the next scheme, we were keen to improve and strengthen our consultation process, as we wanted to avoid the feelings of negativity and hostility. When these matters are reported in the press, there is a tendency for things to be overemphasised and for people to be left feeling hurt. Therefore, we made concentrated efforts to put more resources and time into our resident consultation before schemes hit the formal planning stage. In our next scheme, as shown here, I'm pleased that having held 3 separate consultation events and by involving the local school, all negative perceptions about the scheme, the lack of parking, etc., were overcome. Not a single objection was reported to the formal planning consultation. We are also in early talks with the housing's letting team about running a cooperative managed scheme here to give the residents more of an input into the environmentally enhanced features of the building and an operational responsibility in the management of their home. I can't guarantee you 0 complaints, but I can promise you that our experience is that the more effort that is put into engagement at the outset helps to win community support for development and prompts them to consider the importance of environmentally sustainable living, as well as valuing the role of affordable housing. All this learning has been taken to our largest scheme, which is now on site. This scheme will deliver 236 new mixed tenure homes, with at least 50% being socially rented, a new independent living scheme for the over 55, a retail offer, and a much needed community centre facility. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeanette. And I suppose what's interesting is just that the range of designs which the local community were involved with, because I'm always a little cynical sometimes that everybody only ever likes what they know, whereas obviously there's some really innovative stuff there. So excellent, well done. And having done an awful lot of consultation as well within East Herts, I know how difficult it is. And sometimes it can be quite tricky. Anyway, I'd now like to introduce Councillor Nick Gowley from Suffolk County Council, who's going to talk about the use of the Suffolk County Council assets in the community land housing developments. Over to you, Nick.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Nick Gowley. I'm the County Council's Cabinet Member with responsibility for housing. I'm really grateful to be invited to speak today at the launch of Eastern Community Homes. It's a real pleasure to be here. Let me start with a background to Suffolk County Council's developing approach to housing. Before 2019, the County Council took the approach that I'm sure most large council landowners would likely recognise. That approach was to sell available land to the highest bidder and then sit back and wait for those new owners to bring forward the housing. Whilst this hands-off approach certainly helps secure the greatest financial return for the council, it is also the case that it often takes far too long to get spades in the ground and deliver the homes we so desperately need. This approach can also sometimes leave local communities feeling isolated from the future development of the site, as decisions appear to be made further away from them in boardrooms where they have no access. It also means that when the housing does finally materialise, those homes are created more in line with the interest of the developers' profit margins rather than necessarily in the interests of communities. I need no better example of the limitations which can arise from this approach than our own experience with Chiltern Woods, a development opportunity outside Sudbury, which in January of this year was finally sold to a developer. Looking back over the history of this site, which has certainly had its fair share of dramas and complications, it took well over 12 years to actually sell the land to a developer. That's not only 12 years of negotiation and back office work before we received any money from the site, but it's also 12 years of 0 homes built and 12 years of lost opportunity for the community as a whole. Of course, every site is different, and some sites will move much faster to completion than Chiltern Woods did. So there are certain situations where the sale of land will still be the right choice for the council to take. Our new approach, however, just means that we now have other options available to us. In 2019, Suffolk County Council, as the third largest landowner in Suffolk, committed itself to making better use of its land assets, to help deliver much needed housing, to help plan and develop future public service provision, and more importantly, help communities identify opportunities to create real social value within new developments. Our new approach to housing will see the County Council create a new joint venture company, partnering with the developer to take potential council-owned sites from early planning stages through to completion, building the kinds of dwellings needed in that specific local area, ensuring affordable, sustainable, and high-quality homes are planned from the start. However, our new approach will go beyond just building homes, as we will look to engage fully with our own internal service providers throughout the life of the development. We hope this will help identify future public service needs which we can address, like a new school, library, family hub, or a new adult social care setting. We also have a commitment to our residents and will look to engage fully with them right from the beginning. I hope that by working with local communities, we will be able to use their wealth of local knowledge and lived local experience to identify items and assets that will add real social value to the area. Now, this could be a wildlife area, public seating, a public art installation. It really doesn't matter what the actual item is. The important part is that the ideas will have been considered by the local community, and they will be the driver behind its inclusion, ultimately deriving social value from it. It also helps cement any new housing into the local tone and feel of the surrounding area. There are some great examples of Suffolk developments where the community has played a pivotal role in the delivery. The Cockfield development in West Suffolk, for example, it's about 6 miles south of Brayston Edmonds and close to Lavenham. It's a mixed development of 51 homes, and the planning application was the result of many years of partnership working. The Parish Council identified early on the need for housing for local people, and together with Orwell Housing and Suffolk County Council, it was agreed to develop a scheme to provide a mixed-use development to support the village community on land owned by the County Council. We chose to sell most of the site to Orwell Housing Association for them to develop out and provide SCC with a share of any development profits. But more importantly, we made no assumptions or demands that there actually would be any profits at all. The properties will be owned and managed by Orwell Housing Association and rented on an affordable rent that is no more than 80% of the market rent of that property. The properties will be allocated by Baber District Council through their choice-based letting system. Applicants who meet specific criteria will be given priority. These are people who've lived in Cockfield for at least 2 years or have a close family member who lived in Cockfield for at least 2 years, or people who've worked in Cockfield for at least 2 years. This plan was overwhelmingly seen as positive by residents. They had a development that would allow the village to grow whilst providing options for people born in the area to stay as part of the village, strengthening its community and maintaining historical family or business links. I'm pleased to report that whilst the pandemic sadly impacted the timescale of this project, as it has so many others, development is back on track with the first phase has been ready in summer this year, and the remainder of construction starting in 2022. Elsewhere outside community-led developments, we are working closely with West Row Parish Council, where development in their village will support land for a new community building and a new cemetery. In Copdock, we have worked closely with the Parish Council to ensure development on our land accords with their neighbourhood plan and leads to speed reductions on nearby roads to make the community safer. These are just some of the examples I could give. Involving communities early on in any large infrastructure or housing development is rightly growing in importance. Doing things to communities rather than with communities is too often a recipe for disaster. I believe that in our diverse communities in Suffolk, our people are really the biggest asset Suffolk has, which is why investing in them, as we have here with our support for Eastern Community Housing, is entirely the right thing to do. I have no doubt that the help and advice communities will find via ECH, help which will empower them to examine their own housing and community needs and give them confidence to bring those ideas forward for consideration, will ultimately provide some of the best local housing solutions. Suffolk County Council has already supported community-led housing in the past, as I described a few moments ago, and I can assure you that we will continue to give high regard to community-led housing as an important option when considering the development of our own land assets in the future. Indeed, our new approach to housing is designed to give us more choice. Community-led housing must and will be a part of that. I believe, as I know that you do, that the best community builders are the communities themselves. So it's a pleasure for the County Council to sign up to Eastern Community Homes. I believe we are the first County Council to do so, but I'm sure we will be not alone for long. Suffolk County Council looks forward to working with you and the people of Suffolk to build the communities of tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Again, a very useful insight into how we bring communities into what is right for all of us. I suppose what I might throw into some of the questions at the end is, how do we work with the communities who aren't there yet? Because a lot of them will be people who not only necessarily move into the area, but actually want to move into the area and become very important. But sometimes it's very difficult to capture their views. Anyway, I'd now like to introduce Bridget Smith, who's the leader of South Cambridgeshire District Council, who will give us what they've been doing in South Cambridgeshire. Over to you, Bridget. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Linda. So I'll see if I can share my screen. Oh, blimey, how do I do that? Oh, is it not going? I'm not sure it's going to let me. Can somebody?
Okay. Olivia, can you do that? Can you take that over?
That'd be lovely. Oh, thank you very much, Olivia. So thank you ever so much for inviting me today. I'll keep it short because I'm sure you're all getting weary and would rather get to questions. Is it possible to put it as a slide rather than we've got sort of one big picture here. That's, get it onto slideshow. Thank you. So it's really inspiring hearing what colleagues are doing in the east of England. I was very grateful for that opportunity, and also to hear Dan's actually very moving experience. We can't forget that, you know, housing is about people, and that's the most important thing. So as well as being the leader of South Cambridge District Council, I also sit on the Cambridge and Peterborough Combined Authority Board, and I think we've got an active funding stream at the moment, which will give £5,000 to communities wanting to look at community land trusts. So you know, do have a look at that if that would help you. So it's sort of trigger funding to help with all the sort of legal entity stuff. So at South Cambs, we've got a really good track record of delivering through our exception sites policy. And as I'm sure you know, exception sites aim to be all affordable housing schemes, usually on small sites that sit outside village frameworks, but usually abutting it. Normally about between 10 and 30 houses, depending on need and the size of the village. And these are deliverable because the land outside village frameworks tends to be cheaper. We are seeing these days that it's not unusual to have a small element of market housing as part of those, just to help the books balance. So in the last 3 years, we've provided 101 affordable homes on rural exception sites, and priority goes to local people, obviously, for those. So we already understand the importance of working with local communities, as we've been hearing from Suffolk. And it's really important. So South Cambridgeshire is over 100 villages. We're building new towns at Northstowe and Waterbeach, and Cambourne, which was built 10 years ago or so, finished 10 years ago, was 3 villages and has now become a town. So these land prices are horrendous. And some of these communities are very, very aware of how much they are aging. So one little village, which I was district councillor for, and the boundary review means I'm not anymore, the average age there was 63. And I don't think they had any children. They had a playground, but they didn't have any children. So, villagers are saying to us that they know they need housing that will be attractive for younger people, people just setting out on home ownership or home rental, but also to allow people who want to downsize out of their family homes into homes that allow them to maintain their quality of life. But people don't want to leave their community. So I live in Gamlingay, which is on the Bedfordshire border. I've lived here since the late 80s. I don't want to, when I get to retirement, I'm not sure as a councillor you're ever allowed to retire actually, but I don't want to leave my community because my life is here. But if there's nowhere for me to downsize into, it's going to be a really difficult situation. So we know it's really important to maintain the social fabric of our villages. We have to help young people stay close to family networks if they wish to do so. Because with all the challenges we've seen over this last year over social care and so on, we know it's even more important that these support networks function so that older people, can live happy and healthy and well-supported lives. So I've got my mum virtually in the back garden here. She used to be in Oxford. We would really, really have struggled in this last year if she'd still been over in Oxford with dementia as well. So next slide, please. So alongside the exception site work, we're also beginning to explore how community-led housing can play a part in our overall housing delivery. And we were lucky at South Cambs to receive funding from the government's community housing funds a few years ago of over £50,000. And this enabled us to secure a community-led advisor to work with us one day a week for a year to raise the profile of community-led housing and also work with startup groups in the area and provide internal support within the council, because ideally we want everything in-house so that if somebody sends an email or rings us up, we do have experts there who can provide the information they need. So through this work, we've received lots of interest from our parishes, and we've been able to support 4 community groups with seed funding from us to help them get established. And this funding went towards helping them set up as a legal entity, supporting them to work with the community and working towards bringing a site forward. So, we've heard about the importance, particularly in relation to Stevenage, of that early engagement with communities and taking them with you rather than doing stuff to them. And, we bend over backwards to make sure that communities are leading the way, and they're telling us what they want and where they want it. And then the objections fall away. So in my own village, we've got a development of actually 90 houses with 40% affordable housing there. And there has been no objections to it because, the community knows they need this housing. Otherwise, their children are going to have to move away. They simply can't stay here. So next slide, please. So our first real success in terms of community-led housing is a scheme by Great Shelford Parochial Charities, which received planning permission for 21 affordable homes in June 2020, so quite recently. The charity already owned almshouses in the village, and they were keen to develop more of their land for affordable homes for local people. Now, almshouses may not be the first thing you think about in terms of new models of community-led housing, but the needs that almshouses were addressing when they were first created hundreds of years ago are, the same needs now. This is, people who cannot afford a decent home. So I'm a great fan of our almshouses, and in my own village we have some beautiful heritage ones, and they are incredibly popular with people. They used to be just for ladies of good repute, Everybody who's in there now is, of course, of good repute, but it's not just elderly ladies these days. We've worked with the charity to ensure both our objectives in terms of affordable housing can be met, and we're really pleased that they will achieve rents at half the market value. And it's as expensive in South Cambridgeshire and Cambridge City as it is in London. So we have as many people commute out of London to work here as commute into London, because there's no advantage from the point of view of affordability of living being here than there is in London. And we have to do some pretty dramatic stuff to address that inequality. So it means that the council's been flexible in our thinking in terms of how properties are allocated. But at the end of the day, it's about providing homes that people can afford to live in. And so as a council, we don't talk about affordable homes, we talk about housing that is affordable to live in. So that doesn't just encapsulate the rent or the purchase cost, it encapsulates the cost of running the house. So homes that are close to where you work, to where you're educated, to where you get your healthcare, mean that you don't have to own a car. Car ownership is then a choice rather than necessity, because you can cycle and walk where you need to go. Homes built to the highest energy efficiency standards, including renewable energy and water recycling, mean that your energy bills and your utility bills are much, much lower. So we're very much focused on freeing up as much of people's income as possible for them to actually go and have a good life with, rather than tying it down to paying their rents and paying their bills. And so of particular importance to my council, and I'm sure it's true of all our neighbours, is that our ambitions, our climate change ambitions. So we say we want to be green to the core. And so I'm really pleased to see such an impressive scheme come forward of such high quality and innovative design. So as that site is in the green belt, it needed to be really sensitive to the village edge location, with homes designed as curved terraces with undulating green roofs. And the homes have been arranged around a landscaped green with the 3 terraces designed for sustainability and oriented to maximise natural daylight. Then you don't have to turn the lights on, and that saves you money. So residents will benefit from these low running costs. Air source heat pumps will reduce reliance on fossil fuels, and mechanically ventilated heat recovery systems will capture waste heat whilst maintaining good ventilation. So the planning approval also includes the provision of new allotments, orchard and parklands, and the planting of native trees and hedgerows, and enhanced public access to the surrounding green belt. So this scheme's really about giving back to the local community. So if we can move last one. Linda, are you waving at me to wind up? I'm on the last one.
No, I'm just waving. Carry on. As you say, you're on the last one, and
so we wholeheartedly support the establishment of the community hub, and we're really, really looking forward to working in partnership with them to help us bring forward more schemes like the one in Great Shelford, but also learning more from our partners today. And we'll continue to work with our remaining community groups that have previously been set up, and I know they're making really good progress because of the hub. We're looking for new opportunities on our larger strategic sites, and we have a lot of really, really big strategic sites in South Cambridgeshire. We deal with thousands, not hundreds, but there's got to be a role there for community-led development within those big sites as well. So we welcome the advice and the experience of the hub, and look forward, and thank you very much indeed.
Got a time, so thank you. Thank you very much, Bridget. We've now got quite a bit of good time for Q&A. There's a member of the audience called Lois Dale who's put her hand up. Now, as far as I know, we're not able to take verbal questions from the audience. So Lois, if you're able to put your question into the Q&A, I think that would be the most useful way of doing it. There are a couple of specifics which I think on the Q&A, which I think we'll sort of start with. I know the one on Stevenage and priorities has been largely handled, but I think it's quite interesting, this concept of neighbourhood plans and how do they fit in with what we're doing, how this works in the overall local plan, neighbourhood plan, district plan, NPPF, etc., etc. So Can I throw that one at you, Dan, first of all, because you've obviously worked on a parish council as well as a district council, and how you see it all fitting together?
Yeah, thanks for that. It's interesting because I also I wear another hat. I'm also a clerk to 2 parish councils, so I kind of see 2 sides to every story. And we at one of those councils, we've been recently thinking about whether or not to push forward with a neighbourhood plan. In tendering, we're quite fortunate that we're in sort of a more advanced stages of actually having our full local plan signed off and delivered. Part of that is a huge garden community, so some really forward-thinking foresight there, I'd like to think. In relation to the question, I'd like to see any form of community-led housing being integrally structured within any neighbourhood plan that a parish or town council was looking to put together. It just couldn't sit outside of the remit of some huge housing document that's being presented that's not then integrally developed and working alongside community-led housing. And some of the speeches today have been absolutely inspirational as to how far we haven't travelled yet in my small little village of Thorpe Soakham. But I think once again, my play on working with your local district council, your local authority, to ensure that your housing opportunities and your trust are really credible. You have key working relationships with the right people, and to ensure that the planners and the housing managers will be you will be at the forefront of their plans and minds when it comes to any of these types of planning legislative opportunities coming forward. As I say, it's slightly different where I am because we're moving forward slightly faster with our local plan. But yeah, I'd like to think that you can't look away from this community-led initiatives, and the examples here today are an absolute credit to everything that's going on. And I just hope these messages can be spread as far and wide as possible.
Yeah, thanks for that, Nick. I think the thing you said right at the end was spreading the message is really important, because I think this is, if I may say so, in the area where I am, a sort of relatively newish concept. And so actually getting the messages out, particularly to the parishes, to say, right, get this into your neighbourhood plan. We also have a fully fledged approved district plan with a review about to happen. And again, that's making sure that we've got those policies that we can implement and make sure that actually making sure that this is what the developers take on board, because it is in the district plan and they have to, which isn't always the case. Jeanette, is there anything you want to add on that?
If you unmute. We don't actually have any neighbourhood plans in Stevenage. We do have our local plan, which we finally got signed off. When we did our first development, which happened to be in my own ward, we worked with our local residents with a map of the to develop what we called a community plan, which wasn't quite as intensely documented as a neighbourhood plan, but to get the feeling for local residents. We had a map of the ward and we gave them children's building blocks and said, where would you put housing? And they actually put them where we did our latest, we did our development. And they've marked up a couple of other places, one of which the county is now building on because it was a former school site. So by working with residents and saying, look, you might not need to have housing, but if you absolutely had to have it, where would you put it? And it gets them more involved than doing a more formal neighbourhood plan, we found.
I think Lego bricks are great in things like that. Absolutely wonderful, because you could have all the different colours as well. Bridget, you've got a specific question that's come up in terms of who should Lois speak to for setting up a CLT in the combined authority. Do you have any recommendation on that?
So I think you need to contact, I think it is, oh golly, tell you what, if you could email me, I will send you the direct contact detail of the officer who will be able to help you. But if you go on the website, there is probably an application form on the website. But if you can't find that, then email me Councillor Bridget Smith at scams.gov.uk, and I'll put you in touch directly. Okay, so I would encourage people to. I think they've allocated 100,000. So we approved 5,000 yesterday. So there's money there. So get in quick.
It's not a phrase you hear very often on one of these webinars. There is money available, so head for it, Lois. Head for it. Okay. There was an early comment which came through on the chat about from Rob Smith, chair of North Hill Parish Council, with a potential planning application where the developer is offering to donate some bungalows to the community. And they're undecided as to whether to take up the offer on that. I don't know if anyone's got any thoughts on that. Nick, would that sort of fit with? Sorry, go on, Bridget.
I'd bite their hands off, quite honestly. But
Nick, do you have any thoughts on that? Is it something you bite their hand off for?
Is that me? We've got two Nicks.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Nick Shuttleworth. Yes.
Yeah, I think I'd always be careful about saying too much on an individual case, because I don't obviously know the circumstances of or the detail of it. I suppose I would turn the matter the other way around. If the community has an idea of what it actually needs, and there was a brilliant comment earlier this morning from the other Nick, from Nick Gowley, when he said the best community builders are the communities themselves, which I would totally echo. So I would come at this: if the community knows what it needs, and the sort of homes it needs, is the proposal that's being put to you going to deliver what you want? And if it is in accordance with what the community needs, then obviously that's something to move with and progress. I think it's maybe just turning the question the other way around. What do we as a community, and the people that live here and who want to continue to live in that community, what do they actually need by way of housing? Because the answer will be somewhat different from one community to another.
I mean, hopefully if they're bungalows and they come into the community homes, then they can stay as bungalows, because I think that's often a problem with permitted developments, is it's very difficult to keep bungalows as bungalows, which is actually a big need, but not necessarily by definition a good use of land, but that's something different. Peter, is there anything you wish to sort of comment on, sort of as we run into the end of the session?
The only point I would just make on that one, and I think Nick has quite rightly turned round the question just to make sure that the community is getting what they need. And in terms of, bungalows obviously have a role as far for older people in our communities for them to move into. And it is therefore important that they are designed in a way that people can grow old and live, and they're capable of adaptation right from the start. That is something that probably retrofitting and design for as we get older has not into a lot of our homes hasn't been built in the past, and that is something that we need to ensure we have in future.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. I don't know, panelists, if you managed to spot anything else in the questions or the chat that we haven't covered. I'd appreciate your help on this. I think ultimately we have covered everything, and there have been some answers actually put into the chat for people to contact at the Cambridge Peterborough organisation. Okay. Olivia, do you actually, I know this is just the first of a series. Do you want to just give a few words on what the next series are and how people can sign up for them?
Yeah, so this evening we've got an introduction to community-led housing, which I know a number of you are also signed up for. And then tomorrow morning, which we've still got places for, we have an event looking at housing associations and the partnerships between community groups, housing associations and local authorities. So if that's something you're interested in, I would definitely say sign up. if you go to the Eastern Community Homes website and then events, it will take you through to the Eventbrite booking. I'll put the link in the chat in a minute. And then that's at 10 o'clock in the morning. And then at 5:30 that day, we have case studies in the east of England, where we've got Great Shelford coming, which Bridget mentioned. We've got Lavenham CLT attending, which Nick mentioned. We have Marmalade Lane coming to speak, and also Cannock Mill Co-housing in Essex. And then on Thursday evening, again at 5:30, we have an expert Q&A panel with some of our technical advisors that Nick was talking about earlier. So that should provide a good place to get some more specific questions answered from architects, solicitors, community-led housing advisors. So I'll put the details in the chat, and those last three have still got places available.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. I'm just going to go around the panel for one comment each to help everybody who's not doing this on their way. Dan, can I start with you, please?
Yeah, thank you. I hope that some of the things that have been heard today really sort of spark a light bulb and eureka moment with some of the people that have registered to listen to the panelists today. Community-led housing and CLTs, I really feel are the future, or could be, or can be the future for our younger people, for our middle-aged people, our older people, to be able to live within their communities at an affordable rate. And because I do not feel, and this is not aimed at you, Mr. Aldous, but I do not feel that we've quite got it right yet with regards to these large-scale developments that keep popping up everywhere, and the so-called affordability of those units. And I hope something can be done in that area to rectify that. But CLTs all the way for me at the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Nick Shuttleworth, over to you.
Yeah, well, firstly, just to thank everybody for joining us this morning, and to thank my fellow panelists for their support in launching Eastern Community Homes. And really, I think I don't think I can add too much to what Dan has just said. I think community-led housing, this is an idea whose time has come. We've seen from the examples this morning the way it can be utilised to meet a range of housing needs. The key point is it's underpinned by the needs of the local community. So I hope those listening this morning, if they haven't done so already, may be tempted to sign up for some of the other sessions that Olivia has just highlighted. And I sincerely hope at Eastern Community Homes we can provide that one-stop shop source of support to help a diverse range of schemes get off the ground in the near future. So thank you.
No, thank you, Nick. Nick Gowley.
Well, thank you. I'd like to echo, excuse me, what everybody else has said. As a county council, we're really a developer rather than anything else. And we have changed our approach to housing. We do think that the communities need to be at the centre of it all, because without them, you're wasting your time. And it's simple as that. Now, we're really pleased to be supporting Eastern Community Homes, and we look forward to a lot more county councils joining in as well. Thank you.
I'll take the message back to Hertfordshire and to Essex as well, so, and even to Norfolk. Okay, Jeanette, over to you. Final thought from you.
The community has to be at the heart of all of this. One of the things we haven't been able to do over the last year is what we've done in most of our developments to date, is to actually invite the local community in to have a look at the properties once they've been completed, so that they can see that not just the outside has been done to a good standard, but so has the inside. And we've even had people offering to buy one, and we're having to say to them, no, they're not for sale, they're council rent. So it is absolutely vital to keep the local community on board the whole way through. We have notice boards on all our development sites that keep the community updated with what stage things are at. We involve local schools with doing projects to decorate the hoarding around our sites so they're not boring. There's nothing worse than seeing loads of bland green, brown, whatever hoarding it is without anything on it. So involving the community in all aspects of whatever we're doing is absolutely vital.
Thank you, Jeanette. Just a small story from East Herts on hoardings and pretty pictures. We were knocking down a building, put some hoardings up, fantastic pictures as to what it was all going to look like. The person who was doing the demolition went bust, took the hoardings down because they were his hoardings, and our pictures just disappeared. But anyway, so make sure you own the hoardings as well as the pictures. Bridget.
Thank you very much. So I hope it's obvious to everybody that your council is there to help you. We want to be part of this, and we want these schemes to happen. The greater success will be determined by how strong the partnerships are. So partnerships between every element of the community, including the schools, as Jeanette's mentioned, parish town councils, district county councils. If people work together in a strong partnership, then you will succeed. I just want to pick up on neighbourhood plans. I am a huge fan of neighbourhood plans. If you want to do the whole singing or dancing version, it's a heck of a lot of work and takes a lot of time, but you don't have to do it all. You can do a mini neighbourhood plan that just focuses on one area or on one element. So you can do one about housing or just on one part of your community. So, you know, mini neighbourhood plans, and again, my own council, and I'm sure everyone else's, has a massive resources on neighbourhood plans and has specialist officers who will hold your hand and help you through the process. So, you know, it provides a very good evidence base, and it also, because you have a referendum on it, it really cements the community support for what your plans are as well, and helps you if you have legal challenges and so on, which hopefully you won't. But thank you.
Thank you for that, Bridget. And Peter, would you just like to?
Many thanks, Linda. And I would just, the point I was just going to raise actually touches on what Dan said. He's quite right. Government are putting an awful lot of eggs in their basket of providing more homes in these large sites on the edge of towns. And you know, I've got some in Lowestoft and Beccles in the area that I represent. There always will be a place for large new towns and new developments. We've seen that in both in South Cambridgeshire and in Stevenage right back at the beginning of the whole process after the war. So, but where I think what government are doing, the reason they've done this, is that it is the way the planning is, the way the system has developed, the building system, of a smaller number of large developers. It is the best way in the short term of getting more houses built. But it's not that is a short-term solution. What we do need to do is to have a long-term solution of having more housing providers closer to the communities. And this is where this initiative is so vitally important. And if we just go back 70 odd years, there were far more housing providers out there, smaller housing providers, who were providing homes in the communities that they understood and represented. And if we just look at rural district councils, sort of long disappeared. You know, when I go around in my constituency, I see very good homes built 60 or 70 years ago, and which have the imprint of places like Lovingland Rural District Council, Blything Rural District Council, Mutford Rural District Council, long since disappeared. And those were probably not sustainable in the long term, but those rural district councils did and provide housing in the communities that those communities wanted. It wasn't foisted on. And I think what your initiative is getting back into doing that in taking into account the modern environment and circumstances in which we operate. So very many thanks for all that you're doing in that respect, Linda, and all your team at Eastern Community Homes.
Absolutely. So thank you very much for that, Peter. Thank you to all the panelists for your input. Thank you to those of you who have been listening to us. There are some contact details within the chat. So, and this has been recorded, so this will all be made available to you. So it's all clouded over in Hertfordshire now. So have a good day and thank you very much indeed. Bye-bye.